Sir, Namaskar, Ravi Gupta here, sir. Welcome.
So I introduce you to Dr. Ravi Gupta, the founder and CEO of Illus Technomedia, and we are joined by an eminent panel today in this panel discussion. And I would just introduce all the panelists and the panel topic uh, to all of you. So, welcome everybody in Governance Leadership Summit. It is a two-day summit on the best practices, innovations, and great work which is happening in governance sector, and thoughts and ideas to be shared by the leaders and stakeholders of governance across the country. So, in this two-day summit, we are having more than 55 leaders from governance sector, maybe from the bureaucracy, the political leadership, and the industry experts. So we have experienced the opening remarks by Mr. Ajay Bhushan Pandey, former Finance Secretary of India, and followed by a special address by Mr. Durga Shankar Mishra, Secretary of Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, Government of India. That is followed by an eminent panel of leaders in governance who have really done some great work in governance from past many years. And today we'll be getting to know their ideas of governance here in this session. So this session is about empowering citizens through transformational governance, the way forward. I will just introduce all the panelists here. Mr. Ashish Upadhyay, Additional Secretary and Financial Advisor, Ministry of Power, Government of India with us. Welcome, Mr. Ashish Upadhyay. I welcome Mr. Rohit Kumar Singh, Additional Secretary of Ministry of Culture, Government of India. Welcome, Mr. Rohit Kumar Singh. And to moderate this session, we have here an industry expert who has a great experience in working with government as well, Mr. Manu Shukla, Head of Strategy in Amazon Internet Services, AWS. Welcome, Mr. Manu Shukla. And to welcome the panelists and the moderator, I request Dr. Ravi Gupta, CEO of Illus Technomedia, to deliver a welcome address for our panelists and moderator.
We have senior officials of the government here who have wide-ranging experience in the governance sector, and I welcome our industry expert. And I think we are already delayed, so without much ado, I will hand over the session to our moderator Manu Shukla to take over the session and moderate it. And we have half an hour with us. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Dr. Ravi. Without further ado, I'll also just welcome the guests on the panel and take forward the discussion. Let's start the session by first hearing the views on how technology transformation altogether is needed for our country and for the government altogether as well. It would be important for our viewers to have some thoughts from both our eminent speakers in here. Let's start with Mr. Rohit Kumar Singh. Sir, your views on how technology transformation is important for our country and for the government as well. Open to hear from you, sir, and we'll then move to Ashish.
So I think I would like to say that it is not the technology transformation. We have to transform the governance. And I mean, Ashish ji and I have been in government for the last 32 years. And, when we started our careers, government was a very formidable entity. It was a closed thing. And there was no focus or hardly any focus on, engaging with the citizens to a great extent. As technology became an enabler, it started opening up, and it was easy for citizens to come forward and engage with the government. And you used the word transformation. Transformation cannot be achieved in one go. As I say in all my lectures or addresses, it follows a 4-step path. For example, I'm not an expert, but I've been involved with e-government for donkey's years. And when I was director of IT in 1997 in government of Rajasthan, so the path that is followed is first is information. whatever information you have with the government, you make it public, whatever is supposed to be public, and you put it on the website or whatever. So first step is information. So at least people know what is happening inside. The second part is interaction. The second I is you let citizens start interacting with you, give your feedback online, take your views online, tell you things that how you should improve. The third step is transaction. Then you start transacting with the citizens. Citizens can pay their bills, citizens can, do whatever, fill their forms or whatever. And all these three, if they are done successfully, it leads to transformation. So transformation is the, different way of doing things. I'll give you an example of this CoWIN portal. Now, everybody talks about, I think India has done a tremendous job in, vaccinating 25 crore plus people, which is not an easy task. Just look at the number and how that one portal and combined with the Arogya Setu thing, how it has been successful, and it keeps evolving. It keeps, as we progress ahead. For example, they introduced a feature 7 days back of you can correct, if there is an anomaly in the telephone number or Aadhaar number or whatever. And how so many people have found it so useful who were struggling with as to how do we correct the errors. So, this is what transformation is all about. The citizens sitting at their home, sitting at their PCs, other devices, mobile phone, can engage with inside the government and get things which actually should be provided by government without asking. So that's my take on it.
Sure. Thank you very much, sir. And it's humbling to hear your views, and you are absolutely an industry expert, sir. We all across India have been always taking notes and understanding from the learnings that we have from the implementations that you have done. You're called as an industry IT stalwart in the government. We'll move to Mr. Ashish Upadhyay. So to continue the thought, what are your views on how governance transformation and how technology transformation is the way forward that we have for India? So you're on mute. If I may request for you to unmute yourself.
Yeah. As I see, it says it all. Your title of the session, Empowering Citizens. That comes first. Through transformational governance. And technology is only an enabler process in this transformation. Now, what is governance? Governance is doing good for the large majority of the people as is decided by them and their elected leaders in a democracy. Now, there is a very strong correlation between technology and governance, because technology creates disruptions and also provides solutions. And governance is how you handle those disruptions and use it as to give solutions to the problems of people. There is a correlation between these two. They have to coexist in any society. If I may be allowed to say, governance without technology, the best example is Tukaram Oble controlling Kasab with a danda in his hand. Tremendous courage, but not enough technology with him. That was a symbol of governance without technology. And if you look at technology without governance, that maybe Jamtara is an example, where you have a lot of technology experts but no governance. It causes more problem for the citizens. So our challenge is how to use technology to do good. And Rohit has rightly pointed out, there are various examples, and Arogya Setu and CoWIN is one example he quoted. So the attempt is continuously, is a continuous process, it's not a one time or one process. It's a continuum which goes on with time.
Sure. Thank you very much, sir. And it couldn't have been more easily put. So thanks for your views on that. So continuing the discussion and just taking the thoughts forward on power as a sector. As power and utilities as a sector is moving towards new technologies like smart grid, with global smart grid as a service market expected to be moving to $6 billion by 2025, and cloud solutions for energy utilities being highlighted everywhere, especially in the distribution segment. It is it is often recommended to have reduction in costs while investing and modernizing their power supply infrastructure. Now, cloud computing has a potential to help these utilities increase their operational efficiency and simplify the process while achieving a higher revenue growth and reducing operational costs. So is the Ministry of Power planning to take a national lead probably and become an example to other ministries by adopting cloud and going cloud first and enabling systems to a much bigger and better emphasis? Any thoughts there, sir?
Certainly what you are referring to is the ultimate aim towards which we'll have to work for. If you talk about power sector as such, power has three parts. Power sector has got, I can broadly divide into three parts: generation, transmission, and distribution. Generation was decontrolled in 2012. And after that, we see a lot of capacity coming up. And nowadays, we are in a comfortable position as far as generation is concerned. We have got a capacity of 383 gigawatt. And the maximum peak which we had touched was in January last year, that was 190 gigawatt only. So even if the economy grows, and if economy grows, it requires power. At 10% per annum for next 5 years, I think we will be in a position to supply power. But when you go down at a citizen level, they face a lot of challenges in getting continuous power supply around the clock. Where lies the glitch? Let me come. Initially, transmission was a sector where we had problems. So generally, costs in East India and South India used to differ because there was a congestion in lines towards South India. So we could not supply enough power, what was required in industrial areas of Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and Karnataka side. Now, after construction of high transmission lines, high power capacity transmission lines, we have almost eliminated, and one nation, one grid concept has more or less materialized. We can send any amount of power to any part of the country, generated in Western India or Eastern India, or even in Ladakh. Now, where remains the work to be done and where the challenges are? There's this distribution sector. Distribution sector, unfortunately, is still not reformed the way we want it to be. The ACS ARR gap, average revenue realization against average cost of supply, is 60 to 70 paisa per unit. And the AT&C losses are 22%. So no business can go on. And that's why from time to time, efforts have been made. First, we started with Project to them. We took loans of our utilities. It were taken over by Government of India, and it were taken over by state governments, and Government of India allowed them extra borrowing for that. Then last year, liquidity infusion scheme was launched. Again, around 1,20,000 crore rupees were given to state utility discoms to pay their outstanding dues to GENCO, so we could keep the power running during COVID and post-COVID phase. You might have heard about some shortage of all sorts of shortages of oxygens and beds and medicines, but not of power, which was the most crucial driver of all these things. Now, here, we will require some intervention, and that intervention has to be both technology and governance. What we are thinking of and planning is to introduce prepaid metering on a very large scale. Ultimately, the power sector with the introduction of technology should almost become like telecom. You get your connection, you prepay, and as much amount you get your SIM charge with, you utilize it. And once that amount is over, then you go again and get it recharged. And for that, we have to have a lot of backup system, a lot of back-end computer, internet things, and there the cloud computing will come in place. Maybe within the next 2 to 3 years, all of these things will be in place. Because in this budget also, Government of India has announced a big scheme, which is total allocation more than 3 lakh crores revamped distribution sector scheme. In that scheme, a lot of technological interventions are made.
Thank you very much, sir. We are pretty sure that technology is going to be a big enabler in the kind of long-term vision that you've just explained. And I'm sure that industry altogether is going to be wholeheartedly participating in taking power sector to the next level. Taking the thought forward to Mr. Rohit Kumar Singh, sir, your experiences and implementations in IT are practically an example to everyone. Would you like to share your experiences with us on technology transformation for governance with your specific interventions that you may be taking up in culture as a sector utilizing cloud and technology, and also probably in your past roles with various sectors like Panchayati Raj, health and road transport, etc.? Sir. You're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. I'll give you an example of health sector. When the first wave came, I was Additional Chief Secretary Health in Government of Rajasthan, and we had no background knowledge. I mean, this was a new virus, and nobody knew how to handle it. And then every day, new theories were coming, and then everybody has heard about the Bhilwara model that we managed to contain very quickly the outbreak in Bhilwara, where some foreign news channel had said that Bhilwara will become the next Italy. So we were very happy. While we were celebrating the containment in Bhilwara, suddenly, there's an outbreak happened in the walled city in Jaipur called Ramganj. Now, it was a different geography, different social milieu, different way that people engage with each other. And it was a cramped place and people very high density. So the issue was how, and then the challenge was, of course, infection would have spread, and it did spread. But what do you do as the health secretary or as the government? So we decided, let's focus on saving lives. So we evolved what we called a mission LISA, LI for life and SA for saving. Now, what do you do? So we said, let's prioritize, because suddenly you can't, test everyone, because at that time the testing was also limited. The capacities were not there in the state and even in the country. Only National Institute of Virology in Pune was testing, and then many testing centers started. So what we did was we tried to see how do we identify people who are more vulnerable, which is called in medical parlance a comorbidity. So we had one, and you have worked with that. We had one database on Rajasthan has very good experience on health insurance. So we very quickly zeroed on to the database of that locality, of that 3 square kilometer area, and people who had their addresses given to that health insurance, the public health insurance, the Bhamasha scheme. And we checked whether in last 4 years, when the scheme was in operation, whether anyone had gone for issues relating to heart, cancer, asthma related and taken a health insurance cover on that. So we quickly zeroed on to a number, and from the data we identified that these are the people with comorbid conditions. Instead of asking everybody, which would have been another task and time consuming, and then we sent our healthcare workers to these places and tested them and asked them to be careful and maybe isolated some of them. So I'm just saying this because you use technology, but not in isolation. You look at other databases existing that were there, and then you try and transport, do lateral thinking and say, maybe we can use this for that. So that is how you transform governance, in my opinion. And then, of course, we did door-to-door survey, and now we have a huge database based on Mission LISA, which can be used for public health purposes even beyond the pandemic. So now we exactly know it is linked to GIS as to which geographies there are heat maps, which disease is prevalent more in which geography. And Rajasthan is huge. So in terms of area, it's the largest in the country in terms of area. So it becomes very easy for us to manage. It becomes a facilitator, this database. The second example is, when I was Additional Chief Secretary for Rural Development Panchayati Raj, the Rural Swachh Bharat Mission, we started, we went to each village and we did a Swachhata digital map of each village. So we said, where is the drain? where do we have the dumping site? Where do we have the, the I'm forgetting the names. I mean, we planned out for each village, and over 6 months we developed digital Swachhata maps of 10,000 villages. And of course, I moved here now. The target was that by December of 2021 we would do all 40,000 villages, which I think my successors are on to it. And once you have, then you have a Swachhata map of entire Rajasthan, of course, rural areas. And then you can plan your facilities better, plan your recycling better, plan your, the disposal of the waste better. And even in terms of a specific small village, which drain is there, which drain is not working, whether you want to desilt it or you want to build a new one, and things like that, where you want to have a composting site. So it may sound that rural development and rural Swachhata is not technology friendly, but I think it is probably one of the best uses of technology that we can provide for in governance. So as Ashish ji said, right from power sector, from smart grids to distribution management to a rural village sanitation map, it is all prevalent. And if all is done aggressively, it will transform the entire sphere of governance. That is my humble opinion.
Thank you very much for sharing that, sir. Just extending that thought probably for a minute more, sir. Under your current role at Ministry of Culture, the Ministry of Culture's mission document talks of establishing a database of cultural assets and resources across the country, which includes art forms, individual artists, and their community and cultural organizations. Do you feel that technology, or specifically frontier technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, augmented reality or virtual reality, or blockchain, and these have been focused frontier technologies that the government of India has been focusing on. Do you feel these are going to be having a play when these implementations are going to be taken up by Ministry of Culture?
Yes, I think you snatched words out of my mouth, and maybe we'll hire you as the consultant now since you know everything. So yes, the answer is big yes, and we call it cultural mapping, and we have now given it a new a little paradigm shift that we calling it Mera Gaon Meri Dharohar. We realize that unless you engage people at the village or panchayat level, because I mean we know about realities of India. Every village, every panchayat has something, which has history. It might not be very well maintained, but there might be a story associated with it. There might be people, who have musical instruments or many other things which are, getting in the form of we are on the verge of losing it. So we want local students and teachers to develop information about it, have pictures. So we want it more interactive rather than a top-down approach. We want Mera Gaon Meri Dharohar, of course, very robustly supported by high-end technologies like what you said, and then build a huge database and maybe link it with Google Maps. So if you are traveling from Delhi to wherever, so when you're passing a particular point, just pop-up might come up that 2 kilometers left there is this thing which was 2,000 years old, and if you are interested. So it's a very ambitious target, but we've started working on it, and hopefully we'll be able to achieve it soon. On just one more sentence on AR VR. So since the pandemic was there, most of our ASI monuments and museums were closed. So what we have utilized this time frame is we have created virtual galleries in all our major museums. So for example, in the National Museum here next door in Delhi, all the galleries on Buddha, on East India Company paintings, on Central Asian Gallery, on Varanasi, everything is now virtual. So if you go to a site called NM is National Museum, nmvirtual.in, you can go through and navigate seamlessly through all the objects and paintings that are there in National Museums. In the Ajanta Gallery, we have done the AR VR also. So once the thing opens, you can go there. You can feel the paintings; they will come alive, and so we are experimenting with all that, and we intend to do it in all the museums across India.
Sure, and we are pretty sure it is going to be happening under your leadership pretty soon, sir. Taking the discussion forward on these enabling technologies, with these technologies comes the word innovation and startups. not just as a buzzword, but probably the need of the hour as well. Ashish sir, what is your thought on what is the role that innovation and startups have to play for power as a sector? And also, if in case you can share your views on these new age technologies like IoT and blockchain and cloud are going to be playing for enhancing the capabilities that power sector can have and its expansion and reaching the targets, sir. Your views on this?
Well, innovation is a long-term process. It does not happen. It may click, but it may take long time. I'll give you an example of solar energy. When it started, it almost costed 16 to 18 rupees per unit, and then gradually it was encouraged as a part of pushed as a part of RPO, renewal purchase obligation. All discoms opposed it because they were forced to purchase 10% of their electricity at 16, 18 rupees per unit, while thermal was 3 to 4 rupees at the time. Now, gradually, since we continued with that and more technology started gaining ground and it developed, now we have gone below 2 rupees per unit. And it is getting a lot of acceptability all across the country. So innovation, as long as it's concerned, is sticking with a new idea, getting it, and then trying to give it space and time to take its root and then flower. That is my take on it. And as far as the complete deployment of technology is concerned, modern technology, Internet of Things, yes, it is required, blockchain and this is requiring power. Power is produced generated centrally and is distributed in crores and crores of households. It cannot be stored right now. Ideally, it should not be stored. Of course, we are working a lot on storage because solar energy, when we require during the night, is not available. So we have to have storage for it. But ideally, it's not stored. We generate and consume almost simultaneously. So to have that wider network, one of the widest, I'll say, in the country, we will have to adopt these new technologies. There's no way out, and maybe within 3 to 4 years, everything will be connected. To an extent, then I need not go to your house to disconnect your connection. Sitting in a control room, I should be in a position to supply you power or to disconnect it, depending on your payment. That's how I think.
So, it's music to my ears to hear that from you, sir. And indeed, it is one of the biggest networks in the entire world, and technology can power it to a huge extent. But so, when we're looking at this huge number of connections and utilization and distribution, data plays an extremely important role. Now, how important to you in terms of revenue modeling as well as the overall growth of power as a sector is data? So how is data-driven decision making as a thought for Ministry of Power and for you? And any interventions that you feel are happening right now or planned in this regard? And just to expand that thought, do you think that software as a service and cloud technologies will be enabling this entire thought of analytics and data lakes and data warehouses on the large number of data that you're going to be having? Would you probably at some point of time be evaluating how data-driven decision making is to be implemented with Ministry of Power? And do you think at some day probably Ministry would be interested to go open data and enable more research and development that can happen with the large amount of data that's available with you?
Certainly, I see right now this is work in progress. So it will not be proper to disclose everything till we achieve something and put it before the public. As in, I'll only say a lot of data gathering about the consumption pattern, about the generation is going on, and where we can intervene. For example, even today, out of the total energy consumption in India, only 14 to 15% is power. Rest of it is from other sources. A majority of it is coming from oil, which we have to import at very high cost from foreign countries. So we are collecting data. Second area is cooking. We have gone with the program Ujala. We have given LPG connections to households, but at the same time, we have increased our dependence on import. because LPG is mostly imported from other countries. And so it puts a huge cost on our exchequer. If we replace it with a power-based cooking system, the cost comes down by around 35 to 40%. And also our dependence on import will go down tremendously. So there are various other sectors also like this, mobility, cooking, and other areas where energy is consumed. We would like to use the data, and once we have collected it, once we have prepared it, then we roll out and then we'll share it with others.
Sure. Thank you, sir. Moving to Mr. Rohit Kumar Singh. Sir, what do you think is then with innovation being highlighted and agreed upon that's going to be needed, and with these new technologies that are going to be paving way for further developments that are going to be happening, what do you think is that one next big thing that India currently needs and what government needs to do for technology transformation and governance transformation altogether to be taken forward in India, sir? So you're on mute. I'm sorry, but if you could unmute yourself. Sorry.
So Ashish ji used a word about 15 minutes back called, he called it disruption. Now, if you see by definition, governments are supposed to be status quoist. We are supposed to be in continuity. So I think we have to develop a new paradigm where governments welcome disruption of the good kind. So we are used to a way of doing things. I mean, both of us have done 30 plus years. There are systems, which are outdated. So we need, to be a little ruthless in just throwing away that thing and adopting a new technology. And, irrespective of the age of the person who is suggesting it or who is doing it, we should respect the innovation part. So our procurement systems, our implementation systems have to be made innovation friendly. We are all bound by laws and rules and regulations. And even though, we love to think out of the box, but before we start, doing it in the government, we think twice. What will the audit guys say? What will the vigilance guys say? Because innovation by, inherently means you're taking a risk. You are going out of the existing norms because you think it might succeed. It may succeed, it may not succeed. So our governance systems have to be tolerant of failure. A bankruptcy law. We didn't have a bankruptcy law till 3 years back, 4 years back. US had it. And, so US, there was no stigma attached to a failed company. You start a company, you want to do something, it didn't work. You close that, declare it bankrupt, go and do the next company. Nobody will, you will not have on your CV a stigma attached that you were responsible for a failed company. No, you tried. So the important part is your systems, your processes have to be more acceptable to, as Ashish ji said, disruption, innovation, which is, means almost the same thing. Positive disruption is innovation. And we should be more tolerant of it. And especially the senior bureaucracy and the political executive should welcome with open arms, innovation in everything. Startup India is good, but Startup India is, just one silo. There should be startup power, startup culture. Every ministry should have, there should be one, I'll stick my neck out. One joint secretary innovation should be there in every ministry. Why not? He should just focus on how to disrupt in a positive manner, and he should be given a free hand. I would love to be Ashish's joint secretary, disruption in power ministry. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. And it's wonderful to hear such innovative thoughts, sir. We are pretty sure that India is going to be moving ahead with such safe hands. Mr. Ashish Upadhyay, sir, what are your thoughts on this? What do you feel is going to be the next big thing that India needs and power sector needs altogether? And how are we going to be having this technology transformation or governance transformation lead the way forward to what it may be called as the India 2.0?
Manu, if you allow me to say, Rohit has pointed it out, I think in government, we should put customer first policy has to be adopted. If we think that we have to serve 120 crore people of this country, then only we can think of whatever works for it. I will borrow a phrase from British Prime Minister that I don't believe in left, I don't believe in right, I only believe in what works for my country. So technology agnostic is my approach. Technology has to be adopted. We cannot survive without it. And whatever technology works to make people more empowered, to make them their life more easy, more comfortable, more prosperous, I would like to go with it. And number two, I would like to change the pace of adoption. I know when we started our service together, both of us, me and Rohit, there were agitations on the street against computerization in the office. And it's so nice now, the same people coming and asking for latest models of computers. It has helped them, their work so much. Likewise, for all technology, I would like it should be implemented, adopted with fresh mind, and it should help empowering the people of my country. That's my approach in power sector and any sector. Because right now I'm also looking after the charge of Additional Secretary and FA of Niti Aayog, and there we have got a full-fledged institution working for it. But as Rohit has rightly said, it should have to be there in each department, in each government office, in each government servant's mentality. Only then we will be able to adopt it.
Sure. Thank you very much for those views, sir. And it's wonderful to see that India is in safe hands like yours and Mr. Rohit Kumar Singh, sirs. We at AWS, just to share, as an organization, are highly committed towards innovation, disruption, and supporting India moving to the way forward. And with the AWS public sector completely aligned with the thoughts that you have just said, we look forward to collaborate with you and probably help you take this vision forward in some or all of your initiatives in any way that's possible. Thank you very much for sharing your views in here, sir. I'm pretty sure that the whole agenda of how technology transformation or how governance transformation is going to be the way forward, and how empowering citizens through transformational governance is indeed the way forward. We have discussed the message has gone to all the viewers that we have, and we are pretty sure that there are going to be some big things that are going to be happening in the future. Thank you very much for joining on this session, sir. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you, Manu, and I wish the summit all success. And I'm grateful to Electromedia for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Just a minute. We would like to present speaker certificates to you from your busy schedule. You have spared time for this discussion, and it was really an interesting discussion, especially between the two batchmates, and we loved interaction. Mr. Ashish Upadhyay, Additional Secretary and Financial Advisor for Ministry of Power, Government of India. Thank you so much, Mr. Upadhyay, for being here. Mr. Rohit Kumar Singh, Additional Secretary of Ministry of Culture, Government of India. Thank you so much, sir, for being here. And Mr. Manu Shukla, Head of Strategy, AWS, Amazon Internet Services. As always, wonderful moderation, Mr. Shukla. Thank you so much for accepting this request of moderating this session. And thank you for being here. And it was a lovely interaction. See you with another session audience. So here we are closing this session. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.